Morning everyone, and welcome to the Crypto Minute. My name is Russell Shaw, Senior Market Specialist at FXCM. My email address rshaw@fxcm.com, and today is Wednesday. It's the 16th of March 2022. Just going to bring up our high risk investment warning. I'll keep this on screen for a few moments. And just bring up our market commentaries disclaimer as well. And here's our references, market scope. Perhaps we'll take a look at trading view. Just bringing up the Bitcoin chart. Well, before we get into the analysis, we spoke about. Hang on, let's maybe look at it. Let's perhaps look at it like this. We've spoken about the sort of the way industries tend to evolve, right? Kind of, and sort of hit your decline. The problem with Bitcoin is, are we going to see all these stages? You know, are we going to see all these stages? So what have we got? Embryonic growth, shake-up, mature, and then heading into decline. We certainly perhaps have the first three here, but regulation seems to be potentially cutting into the industry development cycle for Bitcoin. Again, you know, this is very much inference, speculation. There could be it could follow the path of industry development, but there is ominous signs, and I think the important news was that on Monday, the European Parliament's Economic and Monetary Affairs Committee defeated a motion to limit what's called proof of work. Okay, not all Bitcoins use proof of work in terms of their adding blocks of transactions to their blockchain, but Bitcoin certainly does use proof of work. And the problem with it, as Howard said yesterday, is that it's hugely energy intensive, to the point that, as far as I understand, China has banned Bitcoin mining because of the intense utilization on the energy grid. The fact of the matter, the motion was defeated. 7 votes, 30 votes to 23. That's not a big margin, okay, with 6 committee members abstaining. So that's an ominous sign, okay. Now, I was thinking about what would exacerbate this, okay. So they're not, just to understand, they're not banning Bitcoin, they're banning proof of work. That's the energy consumption part of the whole Bitcoin process. But by and large, you ban proof of work, you effectively cripple Bitcoin, right? So, but why would this be such a big issue? Well, it's clearly going to be an issue because there is a it gets consumed, it gets used up. It puts pressure on the energy grid. Well, what's happening now in the energy markets? What's happening now in the energy markets? Well, there are supply shocks, or at least fears of supply shocks, okay? So I'm just thinking, well, how does that affect proof of work in of itself? And it may force that regulation that we've been talking about. It may force that regulation. And if it uses, so Anna says the miners are moving to sustainable energy sources like the volcano in San Salvador. Okay, so fair enough. I would suggest that may be a solution, but by and large, I wouldn't think, and Anna would please correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that's the mainstream at the moment. I wouldn't imagine most miners are using renewable energy sources, right, or sustainable. Okay, I would imagine that they're using expendable. So what I'm suggesting here is we've already seen a vote this week. Okay, it's something worth keeping in the back of our mind. We've said now for quite some time that it's quite likely regulation comes into this market. Okay, and it potentially disrupts this industry cycle. Let's take a look at how the charts. It makes financial sense to use free or cheap electricity so that there's competition between miners. Well, it's certainly an issue that needs to be addressed. I think that's something that you know, the cryptocurrency developers would need to address. It's also I think that it's also not all cryptos that use proof of work, but of course the largest one by market cap does. So the idea here is we need to keep an eye on this. If we go through to our charts, well, Bitcoin still moving sideways. Let's just understand the sentiment. Okay, so we've got, now we're looking at the weekly. Okay, so we've got this is the movement of money from, or the use of say ruble into the Bitcoin markets. This goes, you kind of moved from, it went from, you can see here, but it was all down. So here is the initial impulse from the conflict. Okay, then it gets sold down. Take a look at last week. Uncertainty. Okay, uncertainty in that you have a doji and you've got the price moving up, bulls trying to take price up, they get rejected. You've got bears trying to move price down, they get rejected. We end flat for the week. Slight bearishness in terms of this is a lower high, this is a lower low. Okay, take a look at this week. What do we have? Uncertainty. So here we've got two layers of uncertainty. We've got what we call an inside week. It's inside last week's range. Neither the bulls prepared to take price higher than last week's high, but the bear is not prepared to take price lower just yet either. Uncertain. What kind of a candle is it? It's a spinning top. Okay, it's a spinning top. It's a candle of indecision. Yeah, we just mentioned it yesterday, Anna. We just mentioned the industry yesterday. I'll just redo the diagram in a moment, just so we're all on the same page. But you can see that just the last 2 weeks has been uncertain. We also can see there seems to be some sort of resistance here. Okay. In terms of chart patterns, the question is this a continuation pattern? The longer that it moves sideways, well, the better it is, because that's actually consolidation. It's not a continuation pattern. A continuation pattern is a breakout to the bottom. It's a breakout to the bottom. Okay, so the idea here then is, if we don't break out to the bottom, then maybe we're turning into some sort of base, okay, which changes the analysis. Now, if there is a breakdown, okay, potential head and shoulders here, left shoulder, head, right shoulder, and we'll just need to be cognizant of that. If the price continues to move sideways, well, then it becomes interesting, just in terms of the value model. In other words, what I mean by the value model, the value model we know would be something like this: distribution, okay, accumulation, breakout, okay, or markup. So the longer we get this kind of sideways movement, well, then the better it would be for Bitcoin, one would think. Okay. But if we get that breakdown, so at the moment we kind of stuck in this range, and we've got to monitor it. Does the continuation pattern complete, or does it move sideways? Now, I think a key in the key here is the stochastic. Okay, so it is starting to move out of the 20 area. If it slips back into the 20 area, that's the bearish energy starting to manifest again. If it moves into no man's land, that's the accumulation potentially starting to take place. Let's just go down to the daily here. All right, and this is again a neutral chart, because we're in the between the two blue, so we're in zone 2, so we're in neutral. It makes sense. If we're moving sideways on the weekly, then we should see the majority of price action, within the two blue bands. What is interesting, of course, is again the possibility of a reference candle reversal. This candle that got the arrow in is still the active candle. So if the candle remains with a bearish tail, okay, so there was obviously some sort of bullish impulse move in the Asian session. It's moderated, it's been faded. Well, do we get the sell down tomorrow? Again, this is supposition. We may get a candle that's got a higher high, higher low, but the point is, if we get our 3 candles, well, then that puts us into zone 3. If we go into zone 3, okay, does that mean that we're breaking out of this pennant? Okay, and if we're breaking out of this pennant, does that mean a larger pattern is completing? And if there's a larger pattern that's completing, what does that actually mean? What does that mean for the crypto market? I would suggest that there's going to be a lot more to come out around regulation here. Regulated markets, just basic sort of exchange theory. Regulation makes the flow of information, theoretically makes the flow of information more accessible. If you get a flow of information that's more accessible, Okay, well, that makes the market more efficient. If you don't have a efficient market, okay, that means that there are opportunities. There are opportunities to profit on market inefficiencies. Clearly, that's what active trading is. Okay, but it also suggests that those with the most information are the ones that are going to profit. Okay, so I don't think that the regulation here is necessarily a bad thing, but I'm not certain how the markets react to that, and if it's a movement forcing people to mine under sort of conditions of renewable energy, I don't know what kind of impact that's going to have on the Bitcoin industry, but clearly there's a major change underlying there. How does it affect price? Who has access to the renewable energy, etc., etc. Again, not quite as characterized as we have right now. Let's just take a look at the at Ethereum. Okay, let's see what's happening on Ethereum. All right, let's just get rid of all of these studies. These line studies, I think, are going to divert us. Okay, so the Ethereum here, not quite as bullish. Dare I say bullish? Just go back to Bitcoin. Bitcoin has pushed out of the 20 area on uncertainty, but Ethereum hasn't. Ethereum's still very much sort of in that 20 area. We just want to see if it can kick out as well. I would suggest if Bitcoin is kicking out of 20, and I would suggest if Ethereum's kicking out of 20, now that's a good sign for the crypto market as a whole. Again, just taking a look at the sentiment over the last 3 weeks. Well, here is the injection from the escalation in the conflict, but it gets faded. Here, it's much easier to see the lower high and the lower low on Ethereum because much more slight on Bitcoin. So again, Ethereum just seems to be the slightly weaker of the two, but there is an uncertainty with that. You've got the spinning top. Take a look at this week, inside day, uncertainty. Yeah, so and it's saying that the regulation can affect financial viability. So let's just again, it's all inference. I don't know how the markets. I don't know how these are going to be regulated, but of course, we will talk about it as the news sort of comes to light. And we know that already was a motion that was suggested, but it was defeated. All right, so we've got this continuation pattern here. Again, the longer that it manages to move sideways, I would suggest the better it is. I would suggest that it is better for Ethereum because it's building that base. Okay, but if we get that breakdown, I think that is going to be problematic. If we could just go down to the daily here, like Bitcoin, Ethereum is spending a fair amount of time in zone 2. It's oscillating, but this is the neutral reading. For our purposes, okay, it's really either zone 1 or zone 3 that are the I wouldn't say triggers, but I think more potent than just something that's meandering between the two blues. So again, if Ethereum goes into zone 3, well then that could push the price down through this continuation. If it pushes it down through the continuation, well, there's a head and shoulders here. The head and shoulders are reversal candles, but they don't happen in isolation. There's some sort of fundamental shift that's taking place because it's a complete change of trend. So again, we want to see what the implications are of that. And it's saying government is their taxes. Yeah, I mean, I think by and large there's a couple of reasons that this market needs to be regulated. But by and large, it may be a taxation thing. It's also 100% a monetary policy thing. If you've got no tools for monetary policy, well, you know, that's just sort of a disaster that's waiting to happen. I think that there is the factor of using cryptos to dodge sanctions to a degree. Clearly, there's not enough liquidity to do it as on a large scale. I think that crypto is used often for illicit activities. That's something that needs to be policed. And just general misinformation. There are so many scams around cryptos that needs to be shut down quickly. So all of that, I think, is kind of crying out for some sort of regulation. Let's take a look at the hourlies, and that's besides the energy consumption. All right, let's just take a look at the. So if the hourly can get through to the upper quintile here, well, that will help Ethereum's cause. Okay, but you can see we've got the selling tail. So it's not an exciting market at the moment. It's just sitting in the middle of neutral. He's just sitting in the middle of neutral. So let's go through to Bitcoin. Okay. He's just sitting in the middle of neutral. Okay. So we want to just see, do we get a positive cross here? Do we get a positive cross here? And if it does, can Bitcoin push into that 80 area? And then maybe there's some sort of traction after the overnight boost in Asia. But at the moment, it's not a terribly exciting market. We're sitting in this long-term potential pennant, but if it's not a pennant, okay, then it might be a sort of a consolidation rectangle, which wouldn't be a bad thing, by the way. Then I would suggest that maybe there is some sort of accumulation taking place, but it's not a particularly sort of exciting chart in terms of where it is in the zones. So there needs to be some sort of development there. All right. Any questions? Please go ahead and type those through. Any questions? Please go ahead and type those through. All right, so let's conclude at this point, and we will chat tomorrow, guys. Thanks very much, and have a good day ahead, and chat on the morrow. Cheers.